All life and growth depend on light. The ancient Egyptians knew that light could also heal. But heal the brain? How might light ever get through our thick skulls? And yet, we are learning we are not so opaque as we might think.
The resonance up in here. So let's hear it. And we'll do it 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, breathe, and then we'll go up half tone. And.
Well, I had a brain tumor, and my spine was wrapped around it like the letter C, and my cerebellum was squashed, and my swallowing nerve was stretched out.
Gabrielle had a tumor compressing the spinal cord, the brainstem, and her cerebellum, the part of the brain that controls the fine-tuning of movements and thoughts. She would require extremely delicate and challenging brain surgery in a very small area where most of the nerves are crucial to survival. The surgery saved Gabby's life, and luckily, the tumor was benign. But the necessary cutting to remove it led to an acquired brain injury.
Let's take the drunk out of it.
I couldn't really deal with anything. I couldn't deal with the sound. I couldn't deal with the light. I couldn't deal with movement. I couldn't walk at all. I couldn't sit straight. My speech was very slurred. I couldn't multitask. I didn't realize holding a glass and speaking to a person was multitasking. I could either do one or the other.
Music, which had been her chief joy, became unbearable. It was more like painful noise than notes. She couldn't walk, and she was chronically exhausted and nauseous all the time.
I had to put in my BlackBerry a recurring appointment when to eat lunch and when to eat dinner, because I would start to move through space, and I would see something I would need to do, and I would forget where I was going. And then at some points I go, oh, I think I was going to have dinner. It's the kind of thing other people can't imagine. How could you forget?
The doctors told her any progress would plateau at 24 months. But 25 months after her surgery, she was still totally disabled and could barely leave her home. She struggled to figure out how to get her old life back. And then she heard about the light therapy.
So you're getting some very beneficial treatment this morning.
This is Dr. Fred Kahn, a vascular surgeon, until he switched full-time to developing low-intensity lasers to treat the body and the brain. Hot lasers burn flesh, but cool lasers can heal it.
This carries a lot of photon particles of energy into the brain where they interact with the tissues. So it produces a very beneficial neuromodulation type effect.
This is a photon, a small packet of light. Lasers can make light of unrivaled purity and concentration, sending photons many centimeters into the body. Photons are absorbed by the energy powerhouses within our cells, the mitochondria. This powers up dormant cells and triggers the repair and growth of cells that are necessary for healing. Photons get into the brain in two ways, directly through the skull and via the bloodstream.
After my first session, the nausea went away. And when it stopped, I'm like, oh my God, I've been nauseous for 25 months.
Healing can occur in several ways.
Switch this around.
Low-intensity lasers and LED lights can activate DNA synthesis in cells.
Is that better?
They also release serotonin and other brain chemicals, and they unblock chronic inflammation.
When I used to come to Dr. Kahn, first of all, I was coming in a walker, and when I wasn't coming in a walker, I was using a cane, people were helping me. I certainly couldn't get through the revolving door. And through the various stages of progress, one day I noticed myself walking through the revolving door. So for me to even start the door and continue the door, and especially if someone came behind me and they'd be quick, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So what happened with the light is instead of living in this range, I was living in this range. And not only was that happening, it was moving, and it's still moving. So I'm living in a completely different place. It's much closer to being a normal person, whereas before it was almost like being dead.
I think the surgeon did an excellent job. The type of tumor she had, very complex, difficult to remove, and never without some sort of damage. So she was still alive, but as we both know, restricted with regard to all activities and really leading a normal life.
Gabby is back with the choir, even though she sometimes still needs to manage the sensory overload. She finds that by reducing the input from one sense, her vision, she can better manage the input from another, her hearing. Fred Kahn has since treated scores of concussions and brain injuries, promoting key stages of neuroplastic healing, improving general cellular health, and neuromodulating the noisy brain.
The refinement of the technology is something that will go on for many years. I'm presented with a lot of medical challenges that traditional medicine doesn't help, and if you don't try to help them, they won't get better.